Very respected and eminent speaker of this evening, CA Pankaj Jain from Mumbai, Secretary of SARC, CA Panaraj sir, senior members and friends, very good evening to all of you. Because of digitalization, nowadays we have to be very careful for all the business transactions, like even for the raising the GST invoice, reconciliation, the filing of GST returns, and the income tax return as well. If you do any mistakes, even for the clerical mistake, it will take more time to rectify and justify the same. But when you deal the cash, we have to be extra care, and we have to be take care of the complaint spot as well. Government also taking great amount of efforts to reduce the cash transactions and encouraging and giving incentives for the digital transactions. I personally feel countries like India, it will take some more time to familiarize and adopt 100% or at least a larger percentage of business transaction through the digital transactions. Our members need to update their understanding and the amendments that have been made through various notifications, especially in relation to cash transaction, we have to be updated on regular basis. Those days, the amendments like income tax will come only on the day of budget, but nowadays we are getting notifications frequently, for which we have to read the daily basis. Then only we can do best service to the clients. Keeping this in our mind, we SARC have organized this specific program for updating our knowledge on cash transactions. Today we have with us one of the very good speaker, CA Pankaj, to speak about the important and a very interesting topic, caution to be taken in cash transactions. On behalf of SARC FIC, I welcome the speaker of this evening and thank him for accepting our invitation and addressing us. I also welcome all the members who are attending this important program. With these opening remarks, I request the Secretary of SARC to introduce the speaker of this evening. Over to the Panaraj.
Thank you, Chairman. Good evening, all. As rightly pointed out by our Chairman, the importance of the topic lies in more than one areas, and especially I wish to stress upon the penal provisions, which are very serious. So we have to be doubly cautious. So here we have one of the bright speakers, Mr. Pankaj Jain, to enlighten us on the topic of cash transactions. He is a chartered accountant, qualified in 2002 and DSA qualified, and also a law graduate. His core areas of practice are direct taxes, and he loves sharing knowledge. His passion to share the knowledge took him to the teaching profession, which he pursued for more than a decade, teaching both intermediate and PE2 and final students of CA, and later the professionals at various forums. He is very fond of old Hindi music and likes reading autobiographies in his free time. With this brief introduction, I introduce the present speaker to you. Over to you.
Thank you, sir, for your kind introduction. So because this topic is going to result into too many questions, so let's start the topic without wasting much of the time, so that we have much more time to address all the queries and questions. So this is a very relevant topic. This is a very relevant topic in present times when the government is going on the digital economy, and various digital payments have come into place. Also, because of the lockdown, the digital payment, the payment to electronic channels has increased multifolds, and the government has also imposed upon various restrictions, and various incentives has been provided to ensure that the people move more and more towards a cashless economy. So with this introduction, let's start our presentation on caution to be taken on cash transactions. So now, if I have to say in one line or in a very simplistic way, the cautions to be taken, I would say just don't deal in cash transactions. But that's a very impractical way of giving a suggestion to a client that not to deal in cash transaction, because cash is so intrinsically involved in our day-to-day activity in our economy that it is impossible to not deal in cash. And therefore, it becomes a very important task for the tax advisor, the tax consultants, the tax auditors to ensure that they are well aware and they are updated with the various provisions concerning the cash transaction. There is always a very typical situation which arises because most of the cash transactions needs to be reported in the tax audit report or in some other report. With the auditor, as a tax auditor, we have to sign, and there is an obligation under the law and ethically also on us as a professional to report those transactions. Now, many a time it happens that the client has already incurred the transaction, and now at the time of tax audit, we point out the transaction. It comes to the stage where we need to report to it. Now, many a times I have seen that the clients complain that we would not have done this transaction if you would have suggested us in time, or you have advised us properly, etc. So it becomes a very sticky situation for a consultant or a tax advisor also many a times, that if there is some lack or some gap in informing the clients about the various amendments which has happened, and because of that there is some cash transaction which the clients have done, then it becomes a very catch-22 situation. And that is the reason this, from that perspective, definitely this discussion is very, very important. So as we all are aware that our Indian economy is and was essentially an agrarian economy, where more than 75% of the people were engaged in the agricultural activity, wherein there is no income tax. The activity could be performed in whatever manner, in cash or whatever manner you want to do. And also there was a very poor banking infrastructure, coupled with the fact that the taxation rates were higher. At some point in time, our taxation rates were like 85%, which is now 42.7%. If you note in the case of individuals, so the taxation rates are very, very, very high. So with the incentive that we will not be detected because of the poor banking infrastructure, poor IT infrastructure, the cash economy flourished. It's also called a parallel economy. It flourished because it was one of the most effective and efficient way to avoid, not only evade the tax, but also avoid detection. However, with the advent of progress in the information technology, it has become very, very difficult now to hide the cash transactions, because there are various reporting entities which are reporting transactions to the government authorities, and they are churning the data, compiling the data, and taking or making out the reports and selecting the cases for scrutiny. So now that is a thing of past, that you do a cash transaction and nobody will come to your doorstep. So we always know that the government has always been having the provisions to penalize the people or the SSCs who are engaged in the cash transaction. However, later on, they have also started incentivizing the people, SSCs, who are engaged more into the non-cash or cashless transaction. So we'll try and cover all the provisions, okay, in our discussion. What I have done, the framework of my discussion today is I have listed all the provisions under the Income Tax Act which are concerning the cash transaction. So we will discuss all those provisions step by step. We'll understand the provision, we'll understand the consequences, and the most important thing from the tax advisor and consultant perspective is the reporting requirement, because not reporting the transaction is also a non-compliance vis-a-vis the consultant is concerned. So we should be aware that where are these transactions are required to be reported. So let's start our discussion on various cash transactions. Before I start my discussion, I would like to just put before you a very small analysis of account pay check, cross check, bearer check, and cash. So there are essentially, and there are electronic payment, credit card payment, various ways, Google Pay, etc., etc. But they are all account pay or electronic payment. So basically, there are 4 or 5 category of payment: is electronic payment, account pay payment, cross check, bearer check, and cash. Now, as far as Income Tax Act is concerned, almost in 99% of the cases, the Income Tax Department consider cross check, bearer check, and cash at par. So when we say cash transaction, whenever I'm using the word cash transaction, generally I also mean to say cross check, bearer check, and cash. So what is cross check? I'm sure all of you are aware, but just I'll take 2 minutes to discuss this. So when the check is only crossed and without any mention of account pay or instruction in that on the check, it becomes a cross check. The issue with the cross check is it can be encashed by third party. Suppose I have issued a cross check in the name of XYZ. XYZ can get it encashed from a broker, and that broker, say ABC, can encash the check. So many times it happens that the cross check works exactly as a cash, because if the department start the investigation in the case of cross check, it ends up at ABC, and the payment was to be made at XYZ. So again, it is to not serve the purpose. So very recently, maybe somewhere around 2014-15 or 12-13, they realized this fallacy in the banking system, and they came out with the concept of account pay check. So wherever you will find, in 99% of the cases, the word used is otherwise than by way of an account pay check, demand draft, or an electronic code, which means cash includes not only cash, it includes cross check and it includes bearer check. And that is the reason many times I have seen that a person issues a cross check by mistake, and he has a habit, so he will just cross the check without writing account pay and issues the check. Now, for all practical purposes, issuing such checks amounts to cash payment. So there can be tax consequences, or there can be penal consequences in the case where the cross checks are issued. And that is the reason we should inform all our clients that please have an habit of making an account pay check. Cross check is as good as cash. So with this introduction, let's start our discussion with the first section concerning the cash payment, section 11. So with effect from assessment year 2019-2020, very recently, they came out with this amendment in respect of a charitable and religious trust. In the past, there was no restriction on charitable trust or religious trust to spend the money towards the object of trust by cash or by any other mode. Even if I've spent the whole of my 10 lakhs rupees donation in cash, it was considered as application for the purpose of section 11, and I was entitled to exemption. Now, to plug in that loophole, what they have done is they have incorporated 40A3, which is the section which we have under business, if you all remember, and that is one of the most reported section and most discussed section. Each and every one of us, including the businessman, is also allowed. The earlier limit was 20,000. They reduced that limit to 10,000. So the exact section, same to same, has been incorporated into section 11. The impact of this now is if a charitable trust or a religious trust who intends to claim exemption under section 11 makes any expenditure, incurs any expenditure in excess of 10,000 by way of in cash, that is per person, per invoice, per day. The same principle applies as we have a 40A3. Then the expenditure would be fully disallowed. So if I make a donation of 1 lakh in cash, okay, for medical expenses, then and in cash, so when it comes to computing my income under section 11, that 1 lakh which I've incurred as expenditure would not qualify as deduction. Now, where it should be reported? So it is not reported in all cases, but however, when we are reporting the accumulation in form number 10B, that is the audit report for charitable trust and religious trust, there is a provision to report this excess application. And if the charitable or religious trust is also engaged into the business activity and they are subject to tax audit report, then even form 3CD reporting would be required. The next section is the political party. So as we are all aware that a political party can receive donation from people directly without any restriction. The donor is entitled to get the deduction. It's not like ATG wherein it is restricted to 10% of GTI, 50% of qualifying amount, etc. Whatever amount you give to the political party, that qualifies as deduction under ATGGA. However, even there is a cap of rupees 2,000. So if the donation is about 2,000, it is not only the disallowance, the consequences are very severe. Please note, if the donation received is about 2,000, then the political party will lose the entire exemption. It's so serious. It's not only that 2,000 will be taxable. It would be fully, the whole exemption will be withdrawn. However, there is no restriction on number of donation below 2,000. And if I have 1,500 ka 50,000 donations, that is allowed. That is allowed. However, I cannot have donation in excess of 2000. I can have exact 2000, that is okay. But if I have 2001 ka donation, the exemption can be withdrawn. And that is the reason it is very, very critical for a political party to ensure that they don't receive a donation in otherwise than by your account pay check. Even a cross check, bearer check will not work. Okay. And where it is reported, so in ITR 7, there is a specific column wherein you have to report the donation received in excess of 2000. The next provision in line is 13B. Of course, it's related to the political party, which is an electoral trust. It's a third party which has been established where so that the donor remains an anonymous. When what happens in the case of a political party, when a donor gives a donation directly to the political party, he is no more anonymous. His name figures out, and that with that concept, they came out with the concept of electoral trust. Now, if you see electoral trust, there is a very specific thing. If you see, they can accept by account pay check, they can accept by cross check, they can accept by bearer check, probably, theoretically, but they cannot accept it by way of cash. So the law provides that they should not accept any contribution in cash. Apart from cash, they can accept whatever way they want to. There is no issue. And if they are accepting in cash and there is no basic limit, like you have in a political party up to 2000, electoral trust, even if 1 rupee is received in cash as donation, the whole exemption will be withdrawn. So 13B read with rule, 17C provides for this. (35AD), as you are all aware, that is a provision wherein a specified business, for example, laying of the gas pipeline, natural gas, transportation, etc., warehousing, cold storage. So for those business development, they have provided that all the capital expenditure would also qualify as revenue deduction under section 35 AD. Okay. However, again, to plug in the loophole, because this is a section which provides a direct deduction. Okay. And it talks about capital expenditure also, because 48(2), 48(3) functions only in respect of the revenue expenditure. So they have specifically provided to ensure that there is no technical argument. They have also provided in 35AD that wherever reduction in respect of capital expenditure is to be claimed, the expenditure should not be in excess of 10,000 otherwise than via account pay check. So it's only for capital expenditure because revenue expenditure is already in any case covered under 48(3). Okay. So expenditure in violation shall not be allowed as deduction. Again, reporting requirement, yes. As a auditor, it is important for us also to know as whether there is a reporting requirement, because if there is no reporting requirement and there is a non-compliance, our life is reasonably easy because we are not on under a burden to report it or under the dilemma to report or not to report. Of course, you don't have choice not to report, but then it becomes a very sticky situation for us. And of course, 35AD, there is a tax audit report clause wherein you have to report this expenditure. The next provision is 36 clause 1B. It's a premium paid for health insurance of employees. It can be paid in any mode. Now, I told you that most of the provisions are account pay and all this scheme, but some of the provisions talks about only cash they are restricting. Otherwise, they are completely allowing all mode of payment. So it can be account pay, it can be bearer, but only cash payment is not allowed. And there is no threshold that you can pay up to 5,000 per employee, 10,000 per employee. If the payment is made in cash, then whatever amount is paid in cash, it will be fully disallowed. There is no threshold there. This is one of the most known section 48(3), aggregate payment. Now here, we need to remember very simple. It is per person, per invoice, per day. The limit of 10,000 should fulfill these 3 conditions: per day, per person, per invoice. So if I'm making 5,000 payment to 10 people, 50,000, it is not covered. If I'm making the payment to the same person, but 5,000, 10 different invoices, again, this is not applicable. Or if I'm making payment to the same person, same invoice, but 5,000 on 10 days, again, this would not apply. So the simplest way to understand or remember this is per person, per day, per invoice should not exceed 10,000. Earlier it was 20,000. Now they have reduced it to 10,000. So these are the only provisions where over a period of time the threshold limit is reduced, because if you see in all other provision, the threshold limit is always increased because of the inflation. But this shows the intent of the government that they want to very strictly demotivate people from not engaging into cash transaction. So 20,000 was there in let's say 30 years ago. So that 20,000 value wise has become now 1 lakh rupee. But despite that, they have reduced that 20,000 to 10,000 rupees. So this is also shows the intent of the government as to how aggressive they are into ensuring that the cash transactions are restricted to the max possible. Again, 48.3, the tax audit report has to be reported. Now, there are many instances wherein the department has taken or has written to the institute complaining about the tax consultant or tax auditor rather about not reporting 48.3 transactions. So there have been so many instances. There has been one instance which I know in Mumbai, wherein a fresh chartered accountant, new chartered accountant signed a tax audit report without investigating 48.3 in detail. Assessing officer found some payments recorded in the cash book in excess of 10,000. So not only disallowed it, interest penalty, it's one thing with the SSC has suffered, but even the tax auditor has to go through the whole rigors of the complaint being filed, the department, he's been reported everywhere. Getting to this becomes a very difficult situation. And 48.3 reporting is very simple because you have to just take a cash book and just filter it 10,000 above. So that way is not difficult, but somebody has to actually go to the cash book, filter it, and save the copy with on our record to ensure that we have verified and as per our record it is the compliance is not there. And if there is no compliance, then you have to report it. Not reporting is not an issue. One very important change which I think we all should be aware is there is rule 6DD which provides an exception to this 48.3 section, which provides that under some circumstances you can incur payment in excess of 10,000. For example, if you are making purchase of agricultural produce, if you are making cash payment, if you are making payment to the government where the payment has to be in legal tender. So there were 8 or 10 clauses because practically it becomes difficult many a times to insist for making payment only and only by way of account pay check. Okay, so this rule 6DD provided for the exception, and one of the most used, or I would say misused exception under rule 6DD was the bank holiday. So earlier the provision was that if the payment has to be made on the day when there is a bank holiday, then this provision is not applicable. So what most of the people used to do is wherever there is to be the payment in excess of 10,000, they used to see to the calendar, and whenever there is a bank holiday, they used to pass an entry on that day. So it was there for quite some time. Now, with effect from 29th January 2020, please note, 29th January 2020, this rule or this exception has been removed. So now you cannot get an excuse to make a cash payment in excess of 10,000, saying that it was a bank holiday on that day. Because many times it happens that we are not aware, or the client is not aware, and client has been trained over a period of time that bank holiday hoga to aap payment kar do, kuch nahi hota hai. Getting? So it is possible that the client or the accountant at the client's place has been trained since ages to adjust this cash payment on bank holidays. So the client needs to be updated or the accountant needs to be updated that you cannot do this anymore with effect from 29th January 2020 because the rule has been amended and 48.3 exception on bank holiday is no more available. Then the next section is 43.1. Now, as I told you, if you just recollect my earlier slide, I told you that the 48.3 was there in the statute for ages. Now, what is to happen is people, suppose I buy a plant and machinery for 10 lakhs in cash. The assessing officer cannot disallow under 48.3 because 48.3 will not operate in the case of capital expenditure because capital expenditure is not claimed as deduction. The capital expenditure qualifies for depreciation and depreciation is not a deduction, it's a charge. So there is a Supreme Court decision which says that you cannot disallow 20% of depreciation. You cannot disallow 20% of depreciation just because the cash expenditure has been incurred for purchasing the plant and machinery. So over a period of time, there was no provision to disallow depreciation even if the expenditure for purchase of plant and machinery is incurred in cash. So subsequently, they introduced this new provision 43(1), and they provided that if any person is making any payment, okay, for purchase of any asset in excess of 10,000, and such amount would not qualify as actual cost. Now, what is the consequence of that? The consequence of that is that if it is not qualifying as actual cost, it will not become part of your WDV, and therefore you will not get depreciation. So in effect, if it is excluded from actual cost, to that extent your depreciation claim will go down for the years to come. Now one will say, अरे इसका मतलब depreciable asset अगर नहीं है, मैंने land purchase किया, it's not a depreciable asset. So can I purchase and whether 43(1) will apply? It will not apply because land का कोई actual cost होता ही नहीं है. There is no actual cost working for land because land is a non-depreciable asset. If I invest in building, not as my depreciable asset, but as an investment, again 43(1) would not apply. If I purchase some non-depreciable asset, I purchase gold as an investment, I purchase silver as an investment, and I make a payment in cash. Okay, so this provision would not apply. However, hold on your breath here. However, purchase of land and building, even though it is for investment purpose or even if it's a non-depreciable asset, you cannot make the payment in excess of 20,000 in cash because you will be hit, or the person who is selling you will be hit by 269 ST. So the person who is selling you the land and building will not accept in cash because under section 216 ST, he is prohibited. He is prohibited from accepting cash about 20,000 in respect of immovable property. And the penalty is horrendous. The penalty is the value of transaction. Limitation number 1. Limitation number 2. 269T, which is the new provision introduced, which prohibits any person to accept cash in excess of 2 lakhs. So you may purchase land for 50 lakhs in cash because there is no provision which will impact you. Also, you may purchase gold. Let's not go for land because land is covered under 269 ST. You may purchase gold in cash by paying 50 lakhs. But now, in view of that new provision, a person cannot receive more than 2 lakhs in cash. So automatically, there is a capping now. I hope I'm able to, because therefore you will have to understand all the provision because most of the provisions interplay with each other. And that is how you have to look at the overall scenario. So you can advise your client, okay, you can buy land, you can buy land or a building or a non-depreciable asset in cash, no problem. But then the person who is selling probably would not give you land or building in cash because he is subject to 216 ST. And if the payment is more than 2 lakhs, he will not accept the payment only. So you should know because sometimes the buyer may be your client, sometimes the seller may be your client. So this both the angles you should be aware. And there is the reporting. So as far as the actual cost is concerned, the reporting is in tax audit report depreciation schedule. And therefore, the cash payment for purchase of depreciable asset would be reported in tax audit report. 44 AP. This is one of the most important provision for all the practicing chartered accountant because this is the provision which enables the tax audit provision. Now to incentivize people to do more and more transaction by way of account pay check. Okay, they have provided that if your transaction total volume of receipt and total volume of payment, okay, 95% or more is by way of account pay check. Is by way of account pay check. Then we are giving you concession. Your tax audit limit would not be 2 crore, but it would be 10 crores, and that's a big relief. It's a big relief because for an individual, if they're out of the tax audit, they're out of tedious provisions, they're out of various compliances, various requirements, reporting, etc., etc. Now, there are a couple of important things which you should note. That till assessment year 2021, but the word used was only cash, which means till 2021 you could have bearer check, you could have cross check, but still not covered or still getting the benefit of this 10 crores. Earlier it was 5 crores. Now they have increased to 10 crores. From current year, that is 1st April 21 onwards, they have amended the law and they have now included non-account pay checks also and drafts also. So it was probably a mistake, or maybe they have missed it. They only use the word cash. So if you have to calculate this limit for the earlier years, then you have to purely consider cash. Going forward, from current year onwards, you have to consider not only cash, but you have to also consider non-account pay checks, that is the bearer checks and cross checks. Now it is impossible for us actually to know from the books of accounts that whether the check is a cross check, account pay check. And that is the reason in the tax audit report also we give a disclaimer that the SSC is not in the position of required evidence to establish whether the payments are made by way of an account pay check or cross check, because we don't have the checks. You can't make out from the bank statement whether it is account pay or cross check. So similar kind of declaration you'll have to take from the client to suggest, if you are suggesting them that your limit is 10 crores, because you cannot take a call whether transactions in bank are all account pay check only. That the client has to certify that I confirm, I certify hereby that all my transactions are account pay check. And keep it on record so that it should not happen in future if there are some transactions which are not account pay and a tax audit penalty is triggered. Then it should not happen that we have advised it. Second important thing which we should all remember, very important, is this limit of 10 crore and 95% payment in check is available only and only to the SSC having business income. The SSC who is carrying on the profession, like chartered accountant, doctors, lawyers, notified profession, for them this provision is not applicable, which means for us the tax audit limit is 50 lakhs only, even though our 100% payment is by way of check. Because you will see most of the chartered accountant, most of the lawyer, doctor is difficult, but most of the professionals receives by checks only. So in our case, probably more than 95% of payment would be by way of account pay check in almost all the cases. And therefore, they have purposely ensured that this benefit is not available to professionals. It is available only and only to the business SSC. So generally, we tend to go with the flow. The limit of 10 crore is applicable to tax audit, but it is only for business, not for professionals. One more incentive provision. So these are the two incentive provision we are looking at, 44AB and 44AD. Another incentive provision, again available only to the business and not available to the professionals. So the incentive provision is that if your turnover includes amount which has which is other than by way of cash, or it is by way of an account pay check, then such turnover would qualify, or the presumptive rate available in respect of such provision would be 6% instead of 8%. So the SSC has an advantage of 2%. If he is doing a business transaction in a cashless manner, he can restrict his income to 6%. Again, I will just take a little detour from here because I would like to discuss one very important point here regarding 44AD and 44ADA. So many of the people I have seen, they are under the impression, or the clients, they are under impression or illusion that it is 6% or 8%, that's all. Once we declare that, we are out of it. We are not supposed to declare more than 6% or 8% in any circumstances. So that is not how it works. So 6% or 8% is the minimum amount which you have to declare. But if your actual profit is more than that, then you are supposed to disclose that. Now the question which will arise is, sir, what happens if our profit is 15%, but we still disclose 8%? The assessing officer can't do much about it under 44AD. There are many tribunal decisions that once an SSC choose to go with 44AD, his 8% has to be accepted. Then what is the catch? That is the case, then why I will declare 8%? The problem is many a times what happens is the SSC earns an income. He retains more than 80% of the income in his bank account by way of FD, investment, etc., etc. Because there are no expenditure involved. Okay, but he disclosed 8%. Now the bank balance and the income declared will not match to the extent of 72% because he has declared only 8%. He has shown 92% as expenditure, whereas he has incurred only 20% as expenditure. Okay, So this 72% mismatch remains in your bank. Now, if you deploy that money, say in buying an asset or in investing in FD, what will happen? The assessing officer will ask you a question that you had purchased FD of 1 crore. Please give me the source. You will give your return. So you have disclosed only 8 lakh rupees every year. Now you can't say that I have earned 70 lakhs, but I have disclosed only 8 lakhs because I was allowed to do 8%. So you can do under 4480, but what officer will do is the difference between your say 8 lakhs and 70 lakhs, 62 lakhs. He will tax that as unexplained credits or unexplained investment. Now, as you are aware that unexplained credit and unexplained investment attracts the tax rate. Please note this: the tax rate of 75% with 7.5% penalty. That is 82.5%. And moreover, this happens at the time of assessment. So if you add up the interest, if you add up the interest rate from 34B and C, the tax demand many times goes in the range of 105, 106%. And if it is a reopening case, it can be 130% or 140% also. So this is very, very critical. People are left, right, and center. I am seeing that they have sufficient bank balance in the bank. Despite that, they are disclosing only 8%. And 90% of their saving or receipts are in bank, but still disclosing 8% would be a disastrous thing. The way out is that to ensure that they withdraw that much cash from the bank. Then yes, you cannot enjoy the capital without paying tax. That's the bottom line. You cannot enjoy the capital without paying tax. You can't pay 8% and enjoy 92%. That's not possible. That is very, very critical, and the provisions are very, very serious. I'm telling you. So you should advise your clients also that this is the law that in your tax planning, which means you will have to ensure that you withdraw that much more cash, and that then goes out of the system, so it remains unaccounted cash. So you are back to square one again. And reporting is in ITR. You have to disclose what was your 6%, how much is your 8% turnover, etc., etc. 43CA, 50C, 56C. So these are the three provisions which talks about the same issue. One talks when this issue is covered under income from business. Second, when it is this issue is covered under capital gains. And third, the same issue is covered under income from other sources. So what is that issue? The issue is of sale or purchase or sale or purchase of immovable property. If as a businessman I am selling the immovable property, it is 43CA. As an investor, as a capital asset, I am transferring it, it is 50C. And if I am receiving the immovable property at a less than market value or the stamp duty value, 56 is triggered. Now, many times it happens that I have entered into a transaction, I gave the advance, and for some reason there was some NOCs and some certificates and things are required from the seller which he could not produce. So the transaction was suspended or kept on hold. So it took 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, and post that, after all the compliances are made, all the documents are being provided, the transaction is consummated. Now the problem which arises is that the transaction happened say 5 years ago, and the stamp duty then and the stamp duty now, there is substantial change, and because of that, the sale consideration is lower than stamp duty value. So that was a practical difficulty which most of these people used to face. So they amended the law. They provided, yes, we understand that this is a practical difficulty which may happen, especially in the case of immovable property. So they provided that whenever a date of agreement for immovable property precedes the date of registration, then the stamp duty valuation as on the date of the agreement would be substituted for the current stamp duty. However, very important, this benefit of substituting your stamp duty at an old date would be available only if the consideration at that point in time was paid by way of an account pay check, electronic transaction, or account pay demand draft. So if I say that I have paid 5 lakhs in cash in 1998, and now we are consummating the transaction in 2021, sorry sir, you will be subject to stamp duty provisions or valuation as on date, because cash, they say, they will not consider. Obviously, because the reason is very obvious, because you can just create a document saying that cash diya tha. Who's going to check how? There's no way. Bank, at least you can go to the bank, call for the detail, get the details of the transaction. So you can't fudge a banking transaction because it is recorded by third party in their books of accounts. That is a bank, and that is how they have provided. Again, the reporting is there. Yes, 43CA, 50C, and 56. These are all reporting required in the tax audit report, and therefore, whenever there is a substitution of value, please check the agreement. Please check whether the consideration was by way of cash or otherwise than by account pay check, and accordingly you'll have to report in your tax audit report. 69D, this is an hundi thing which nowadays is not in much use. It's a traditional thing. It's like a bill of exchange. When people used to write hundi, and it was a negotiable instrument. It is a negotiable instrument. So to ensure that this negotiable instrument don't go out of the banking system, okay, they categorically provided for a restriction that you cannot borrow amount on hundi from anyone, or you cannot repay the amount borrowed otherwise than through an account pay. So please remember here, a person who is lending, who is giving, is under no obligation. So if I am the lender, okay, and you are the borrower, okay, so this provision applies to you. I can give you 10 lakhs in cash. I have absolutely no problem. No one can stop me. There is absolutely no provision under the whole Income Tax Act which restricts or prohibits me from giving you in cash. But definitely there is a provision in the Income Tax which prohibits you from accepting cash. So there are two provisions. One under 69D, it talks of any amount. Please remember, there is no 20,000 limit, no 2 lakhs limit. So हम 2 lakhs वाले में जाएंगे ही नहीं. We will not go to 2 lakhs limit because for hundi there is no threshold. Any amount or every amount you have to be by way of an account pay check. So if you are borrowing, you are subject to 69D. Not only borrowing, if you are repaying in cash and I am accepting in cash, so your repayment is subject to 69D. Now here is the cash, and my accepting that is covered under 269T. I hope you are able to connect that 2 lakh provision. No person should receive any amount in excess of 2 lakhs in cash from a single person during the year for a single transaction. So loan देने में कोई problem नहीं है, but when it comes to repayment, please remember, you can't say कोई problem नहीं, repayment आप करो, repayment में you are covered under 216T, ST and SS, 69D. Sorry sir, even the recipient now is subject to that new provision wherein the penalty is equivalent to the amount of loan, and the penalties here are very, very severe. Huh? So if I am borrowing say 1 crore on hundi in cash, the penalty is 1 crore. Sorry, here the consequence is that is under 269 SST. Here the amount borrowed would be considered as your income, so that you will be treated as income, but the tax under 69D is 75%. Please understand, the tax under 69D is 75%. As a reporting requirement, yes, there is a reporting requirement, tax report. Though this section, this hundi thing is out of fashion now, so hardly you will find anything which concerning this, but yes, this is the provision in the law. Section 80D, preventive health checkup, sorry, medical insurance premium. Now, here the restriction is only on cash. You can make the payment by bearer check, by account pay check, by cross check, but not by way of cash. Medical insurance shall be paid by any mode other than cash. So what happens if it is paid by cash? The deduction under section 80D will not be allowed. Is there a reporting requirement? Yes. Tax audit report by chapter 6A deduction, there is a separate clause. So when you are reporting 80D, please ensure that you are checking the receipt and ensuring that it is paid by way of check. Preventive health checkup. There is one more provision which provides for an additional deduction if you go for a preventive health checkup. Up to 5,000 you get a deduction. So this is the one section which provides that you can make by any payment including cash. Obviously, because the amount is not very substantially large, it's only maximum 5,000. You may incur 30,000 for a preventive health checkup, but you get only 5,000 as deduction. But this is the one very specific provision which categorically provides that you can make payment by check, by cash, by whatever way you want. It will be not there is no consequences. So the section provides preventive health checkup payment can be made by any mode other than cash. Sorry, including cash. ATG 5D. ATG is our regular deduction donation which we give to the charitable trust other than Prime Minister Relief Fund, Chief Minister Relief Fund, that 12 or 13 specified funds. Okay, ATG is for all other charitable trusts and religious trusts who can't receive the donation in the ATG. You cannot get deduction for religious trust. So for all charitable trust, you can give the donation. However, if the amount exceeds 2,000, okay, then it cannot be by cash, which means again, a charitable trust can receive donation by bearer check, cross check also, because the section, if you read the fine print of the section, it says the donation of sum exceeding rupees 2,000 shall be by any mode other than cash. What happens if it is in cash exceeding 2,000? No deduction is allowed under ATG. And is there a reporting requirement? Yes, the reporting requirement is in the same chapter 60 reporting requirement in tax audit. ATGGA, research and development centers, donation given to them. Same provision exactly, 2,000. Again, any other mode other than cash. So bearer check or cross check is allowed. So the provisions ipso facto similar. Okay. The earlier limit was 10,000. Now they have reduced that limit from 10,000 to 2,000. Same exactly as we discussed for 48.3. The limit reduced from 20,000 to 10,000. Here they reduce the limit from 10,000 to 2,000. So what happens if there is a payment in cash about 2,000 as a donation? You can give the donation. Okay. However, a charitable trust can receive the donation, but the donor will not be eligible to claim that as a deduction under section ATG or under section ATGG. Okay. Now, one very important point which I would like to point out here. Again, the tax audit report, you have to report it. Now, you all must be aware that there is exactly the same provision under section 35 and under ATGGA. SSC who has income from business, can claim deduction under 35, which is 150%, 175% also. And the SSC who doesn't have income from business qualifies for deduction under ATGGA. Same donation, same institution, but depending upon your nature of income, okay, the deduction is available. Now the corresponding amendment is not there under 35. So if under 35 I make a payment of say 50,000 rupees, or I make a payment of 20,000 rupees, 10,000, whatever, okay, I will get deduction of 150% of that amount because there is no such provision under that section. One may argue, sir, 48.3 hai, but I would say that this is a 35 is a special provision which talks about a specific deduction which is not related to your business activity and donation to outsider, and 150, 175%. So there may be some I can say disconnect between 48.3 and 35. Of course, department can say that we will disallow under 48.3, but 48.3 limit is 10,000 then. But ideally speaking, when they introduce an amendment under ATGGA, that they should have also introduced some amendment under 35 as well. But yes, there is no disallowance under 35 if the payment is made in cash. Again, 30. Yeah. ATJJAA. This was a provision introduced to promote the employment. It provides that if a company provides an employment to more than a specified number of people every year, then whatever salary is paid to them, the SSC would be eligible for additional 30% deduction. So if I incur a salary of 100 on such specified employees, then I will get 30 rupees extra deduction. So 100 I will get as salary under 37, and I would be entitled for 30 deduction also. Okay. So there are two categories of business. One, I start a new business and I employ more than 100 employees and stuff like that. And second category, I have an existing business, doing business since many years. and I want to claim the benefit of this section. So that is called as an existing business. So this section provides that if the salary is paid by way of an otherwise by way of an account paid check, in a case of an existing business, okay, then there is no limit. Whatever amount you pay, such additional payment would not qualify for deduction of 30%. I hope you're getting the point. So if I'm an existing business and I incur 1 lakh rupees ka salary to my new employees who qualifies for this deduction, so I will not get 30,000 deduction. Of course, that 1 lakh will also get disallowed under 48(3). I hope you're getting the point. That 1 lakh will get disallowed under 48(3). That 1 lakh 30% would also be disallowed under 80JJA. And where is the reporting? Yes, there is form number 10DA wherein you have to report the deduction on computer deduction, where you will have to examine whether the salary is paid by cash. However, the interesting thing you should note is this provision is not applicable. This provision is not applicable in the case of new business. This provision is not applicable in the case of new business, which means if a new business incurs 1 lakh rupees expenditure in cash, okay, that may be disallowed under 48(3). Obviously, because 48(3) prohibits any payment above 10,000. However, 30% of that 1 lakh, 30,000 would qualify under 80JJA because this provision is not applicable to new business. So you need to keep this in mind, that there is an existing business and new business concept as far as 80JJA is concerned, and there is a reporting requirement under 10D. And this is one of the very unique provision which has been introduced, 194N. TDS on cash withdrawal from bank. Again, this is a punitive kind of provision to restrict or to ensure that the people don't unnecessarily withdraw cash. And if they are withdrawing, they face TDS. And not only they face TDS, but the whole concept of this was that the moment TDS is deducted, the bank will file the TDS return. The moment bank files the TDS return, it is captured in the system that on this PAN number, 5 crore cash is withdrawn. So that a department artificial intelligence can start working on it, getting that what are the income reported on that PAN, what are the activity of that PAN, and what is the cash withdrawn for the PAN. So the artificial intelligence may give the report that this nature of business or this kind of activity, this cash is very, very disproportionate. So this is more of a surveillance provision rather than actually a provision to get TDS, because TDS will get the credit. So as such, there is no penalty or no cost involved for the SSC. But definitely this is more of a surveillance provision. And what they have done within that surveillance provision, they have also put a punitive provision. Now this is, I hope this is not getting complicated. What they have done very interestingly, in this surveillance provision, they say that, okay, if the person who is withdrawing cash has not filed his return for last 3 years, for all 3 years, then the TDS will be deducted at 5% instead of 2%. And the threshold limit would not be 1 crore, but it would be 20 lakhs. So it says that from 20 lakhs to 1 crore, TDS will be 2%, and above 1 crore, TDS would be 5%. And if you have filed your return in time, then the TDS would be 2% above 1 crore, up to 1 crore, no TDS. Now, how do we know, or how do the bank keep a track whether they have filed a return or not? So the bank did not worry about it for the simple reason that the CPC portal has given the utility now, wherein the SSC or the bank can feed in the PAN, and there will be a report which will say whether 2%, 5%, 20 lakhs, 1 crore applicable, not applicable, and that report can be used as a basis for the bank to take a call whether it is covered under 20 lakhs threshold limit or 1 crore ka threshold. So this is a very funny provision in the sense that you see all TDS provision, right, from 192, okay, to 195. Everywhere there is some element of income involved, and everywhere the transaction is between two people. Then only there is a TDS. There is one payer and their payee, and the payer deducts the tax at source, or payee collects tax at source. So basically, essentially, the TDS provision is basically deduction of tax at source. Source is source of income for income, there has to be at least two people involved in a transaction. This is the only provision under the whole chapter 17b. This is the only provision where there is no transaction involved, because what you are doing essentially, you are shifting money from your bank to your pocket, and it's shifting of money from your one pocket to another pocket. There are no two people involved. So you have opened an account with XYZ bank account. You have the balance in that bank account. You are withdrawing that money and bringing it into your business, cash. There are no two people involved. You are only shifting money from one pocket to another, and still the TDS provision is triggered. So there is a constitutional challenge angle also, whether constitutionally they can invoke this kind of provision or not, which is under debate, and people are trying their luck with the challenge in the courts. But yes, this is a very, very critical provision, and because of this, what happens is that credit for TDS is allowed only if the income is offered for tax. Now there is no income here. So obviously, of course, they have made an amendment under Rule 37BB, providing that as far as 194 N is concerned, TDS credit will be allowed even if the income is not offered to tax, because there is no income, there is no transaction. So this is a surveillance provision basically, and as also they have compliance, they have also included a written filing requirement and made it a compliance provision. So this is a new provision introduced last year or a year before, an amended in last year, 194N. So as far as this is applicable only to the banks and not to the SSE other than banks and cooperative banks. But this 269 SS&T, this is a provision which we have debated, examined, discussed many times. So this provision says what? This talks about a borrowing of a loan or deposit. No person shall take or accept from any other person any loan or deposit, and there is no new addition or any specified sum, otherwise than by way of an account pay check, if the amount is rupees 20,000 or more. This provision is a very old provision, and this provision has played a vital role in restricting the cash transaction in the books. Otherwise, without this provision, anybody can give whatever cash they want. If in my search, 5 crore rupees is found, I would say that I have taken 10 lakhs rupees from 50 people, and I can tell them because there is no restriction. But now I can't say that because there is this specific provision. So this provision has played a very vital role as far as the cash transactions are concerned. Now, what this signifies, 269 SS is applicable only to a person who is accepting the loan. Which means if I am giving the loan to you of 10 lakhs rupees in cash, I am not subject to any provisions. Same, if you remember 69D, same to 69 SS. Okay, but the person who is receiving it, yes, is subject to the regards. And what is any other specified sum? So if you remember 43.1 actual cost, that I've explained that if it is a land, 43.1 is not applicable. But I will not go under 43.1. The buyer would be subject to this penalty, because the seller. So if I'm a seller and you are the buyer, you give me 10 lakhs rupees for purchase of land in cash, and if I accept it, 269 SS is triggered, because no person shall take or accept. So it may happen in some case that 43.1 is also triggered. That is, the depreciation will not be allowed to the buyer, and the seller will also be penalized. That is the case where I purchase a building, which is a depreciable asset. If I purchase a building, which is a depreciable asset, so actual cost I will not get depreciation because I have purchased in cash, and the other person who has sold me has received the money in cash. So again, 269 SS is applicable. So definitely, with these new provisions in place, no person who is dealing in real estate would accept any cash. Okay, what is the penalty? Now the penalty here is horrendous. The penalty is the amount involved. The penalty here is amount involved. Is there a reporting requirement? Obviously, 269. 216T talks about the exactly ulta thing, that I have taken the loan by way of account pay check. but at the time of repayment, I am giving it by way of cross check, bearer check, or cash. So both the transactions are covered. And the penalty is same 271D and 271E. Tax audit report. Tax audit report. Now, as far as the loan to be taken or loan to be repaid by cash, one can understand that that has to be avoided. However, many a times it happens that the loan has been recorded in the book by way of a book entry. I'll give you a simple example. Say I have a client who has a debenture in the books. Okay, he wants to get a property on rent. Now the landlord says that I will give you this property only if your share capital is above 1 crore, because then you are not getting any protection under Tenancy Act. Okay, so what I do is my share capital is 1 lakh. I have 1 crore ka debenture which I have given as a promoter. I convert the debenture to share capital. Okay, now when I do that, it amounts to repayment of loan. I have repaid the loan. Now I have repaid the loan otherwise than by account pay check. So there is no account pay check which is issued, which means all other mode of payment, otherwise account pay check or electronic mode of payment, all other mode of payments are covered there. So this is a very critical situation. Now the department can issue a notice saying that the payment has not been made by way of an account pay check. It is a book entry. It's a book entry. And many times it happens, if you see in a normal business transaction, what we do, book entry is a routine thing. इससे लेना है, इसको देना है. Why unnecessary to receive the money, give the money? Just settle it. Pass a book entry in the books. But then this is something which may trigger 269 SS or 269 T. However, there is a clause, section 275, which provides that if you can show a reasonable cause, that there was a business necessity to do this transaction, and there was no intention to hide this transaction or avoid this transaction from detection, then the law provides that the penalty need not be levied. But we will have to go through the process of the notice being issued, the reply to be given, and the department may not, which in all probability don't accept any reply. They pass the order levying the penalty. You go to the appeal. You may succeed ultimately in the appeal, but you will have to go through the whole process. And therefore, to the extent possible, whenever you are advising your clients, to the extent possible, try and avoid the loan transaction or the repayment of loan transaction by way of a book entry. However, genuinely, we try and avoid. If this is the case which I have discussed with you, that I have no choice, I don't have money in the company to repay the debenture and then again to deposit. If I would have money in my bank company, so what I would have done is I would have repaid as a company, I would have repaid the debenture, and that shareholder would have invested in the shares of the company. Then there was no issue. But because there was no money, it was all locked up in stock and debtors and other things. I didn't have the money. I had no choice but to take that property because it was a make or break deal. Okay, so the person could the landlord was not willing to hold it for an indefinite period or maybe for 15 days time. He wanted to be done in 5 days. How to do? So I pass a book entry. So in such cases, probably I would be able to establish reasonable cause plea. But then this is a very touch and go situation, and I have received a notice in exactly the same case, and it's a real life example I have taken. I have received a notice. I have represented before the officer, the additional commissioner. Additional commissioner has agreed with me. Yes, this is a genuine transaction, but he says that I will have to seek the permission from my commissioner, whether I should drop it or not drop it. And in all probability, they will not drop it. Now that it has become faceless, so I don't know how it will work. Okay, but if they don't drop it, then you have to go to, of course, if you go to tribunal, 100% you will get relief in this kind of transaction. And tribunal has been taking a very, very liberal view on reasonable cause. So they try and understand and they try and look at whether there was any intention or whether there was a business necessity to do this and whether there was any intention to hide the transaction or to not report the transaction. Now the problem with the auditors in the case of tax audit report is there is yes or no. There is no provision in the tax audit report to say that because of this requirement, there was a book entry. I hope you're getting the point. Suppose I'll give the same example, the example which I have discussed with you, that the debentures were converted into share capital. The auditor had no choice but to report in the tax audit report that the payment was made otherwise when the account pay check. It asks whether the payment is made by account pay check. Yeah, otherwise than by account pay check. He has no choice. He said yes. And because it is said yes, the department system has picked it up. This tax audit report is saying that there is non-compliance with 269 SS, and therefore the penalty should be initiated. Now, if you write no, that is incorrect because there is no account pay check involved. What to do? Getting what to do? So here, what we normally do is we give a qualification in form number 3CB. 3CB, you have choice to give the qualification, and there you explain this transaction and say that since it's a business necessity, so and so, this is not treated as being covered under 269 SS. Read with section 75. This is a way in which you can cover the interest of your client. Because if you say yes, either the system or the audit party or somebody is going to pick it up and say that the payment cash mein hua hai, yeah, otherwise an account pay check hua hai, please levy penalty. So this is a very critical situation when it comes to the tax auditor. And the institute should make the representation to provide yes, no, and third option, note or something. Because if there is only yes or no option, and when you are filing online report, we used to issue a physical report, we used to give remarks and we should mention this. Now in an online report, it is either yes or no. You can't do anything about it. So the representation should be made to the security that please provide one more option, that remarks, and there you can explain the whole thing, so that before leaving the penalty, that the system is aware, or the person who is initiating the notice is aware of the transaction before he issues the notice randomly. So just think about this provision. This provision, try and avoid book entries. That is my piece of advice. And if in that case the client had 10-20 lakhs rupees also in the bank account, we could have done it. That give 20 lakhs, that he will invest in share capital. Again, give back 20 lakhs, invest in share capital. You can just rotate the money and get it 1 crore done. Even that would have worked. Okay, but nevertheless, try and do whatever to the extent possible account pay banking transaction. Not possible, then yes, you have to ensure that you have a reasonable cause plea which you can establish before the authorities. Otherwise, you will be subject to the penalty under 271D or 271E, which is equivalent to the amount of loan repaid or loan received. So in this case, the amount involved is 1 crore in my example. So I have received a notice for why the penalty of 1 crore should not be levied. That's a substantial amount. If they levy the penalty and say that 20% borrow, then we had it. So this is something which we need to be very, very careful. And this is avoidable. What I mean to say is this process or this notice and this penalty is very, very much avoidable. This planned properly. 269 STM. This is the most critical provision which has come up recently. Now, earlier, a person who receives cash, he had nothing to worry. He had nothing to worry. Suppose if there is a smuggler who earns all his income in cash, and he wants to buy a watch worth 35 lakhs rupees. He comes to my shop, he gives me 35 lakhs rupees, I give him the watch, that's the end of it. Now department wants to trace it, they can't do anything about it. They can't stop me from doing it because there was no provision. If you remove this provision, there is no provision under the whole Income Tax Act, because that smuggler or that person who is doing some illegal activity, in any case, is not disclosing anything in his return. So there's no question of 48.3. 48.3 applies only to those people who are accounting everything and who are spending from the accounted income. So for the people who are generating cash and spending cash, there was no one stopping them. So they were freely able to utilize the money, and as far as you are able to utilize your money, there is no need for you to actually worry about the taxation. One class of the people, I'm saying. So they came out with a very good idea and a good provision. This provision came very late, but definitely be late than never. So this says that no person shall receive an amount of 2 lakhs rupees or more. Now please remember, receive. 269 SS and T was in respect of the person who is borrowing the money and the borrower repaying the loan. This is the section which says not more than 2 lakhs, and that is the reason this new provision, all our clients should be trained properly. You should make a detailed note with a proper example and give it to the client. I'm sure सबने किया होगा, but still many times it happens that it just go out of the radar and the SSC just accept the money कि हम लोग पहले लेते ही थे, अभी क्या हो गया? So aggregate payment from a person in a day or in respect of a single transaction or in respect of the transaction related to one event or occasion for a person. Otherwise, then my account pay check. For example, if I have a marriage in my family, I have loads and loads of cash unaccounted. I want to spend 5 crore rupees on a marriage. Earlier, there was no one stopping to it. I used to pay everybody cash and there was no trail. Now the person is receiving the cash and if he's accounting for it, of course, even if he's not accounting, then you are out of the income tax preview altogether. And that's a matter of investigation. But then the person receiving the money will say, no, sorry, sir, I'm not going to accept it. Or if I want to buy a watch, now I can't take 5 lakhs and go to a shop and say that no, no, he will say, X it over, sir. Okay, so this has curtailed the purchasing power of cash to a greater extent. And this is which is one of the very, very important point. Earlier, the purchasing power of cash was not curtailed. Okay, so this is curtailed to a greater extent, of course. Okay, and this section has an interplay with many other sections. So, for example, a charitable trust can receive donation in cash. A donor giving donation in cash. A donor giving donation in cash will not get ATG. But as far as charitable trust is concerned, कोई problem नहीं, चाहिए होता donation ले सकते हो. We used to see in the film na, that this Robin Hood kind of hero used to get some money in cash and he used to go to a Anathalaya and used to just donate that money in cash. Now if that is done, even though it's a charitable trust, whatever is the amount received is the amount of penalty. So that is very, very serious. And if I receive 10 crore ka donation, a charitable trust receive 10 crore ka donation in cash, the penalty is 10 crore, 10 lakhs in cash. The penalty is 10 lakhs. So this section will have interplay with many, many things. For example, I'll give you another example. Chalo. Suppose I want to give a gift to my relative. Okay. 20 lakhs rupees, I take a cash and give the gift. Now you will say section 56 relative is not taxable. It's my capital, tax-paid money I am giving. Nothing can stop me from, because it's not a loan. Okay. So 269 SS, 269, nothing is applicable. But the person who is receiving the money would be hit by this section. So he will not be hit by section 56 because he is relative. But he will be hit by 271 DA. And वहां पर अगर hit होता है तो 30% tax है. यहाँ पर 100% tax है. I think so this section, I think I would as a study, getting each one of us should go through this section again in detail, make note and try and understand various interplay of this section with the other section and other transactions, and list down where it can impact your clients. So that is where, and the penalty is substantial. If I'm giving 10 lakhs a loan, okay, that full 10 lakhs becomes not taxable. That 10 lakhs is the penalty. So the penalty is basically like 100% of the income or the amount. Tax is 30% only, but this penalty is the equivalent to the amount received. However, yes, there are exemptions available. Withdrawal from bank. Okay. 216 SS is triggered. You see 216 SS, जो हमने देखा था, no person should take or accept the loan or cash. If 216 SS is triggered, then 216 ST can't be triggered, because of course you can't punish a person twice for the same offense. So if I'm borrowing money in cash and 216 SS is triggered, then ST can't be triggered because I have already been penalized for the same amount in that section. Okay, and in this pandemic time, for 2 months period, okay, when there was a second wave in India, so the CBDT came out with the notification, exemption notification, saying that if the cash payment is made to an hospital for COVID treatment between 1st April 21 to 31st May 21, then this provision would not apply. However, the hospital will have to get the records of payer and the payee. Suppose if patient is X and the person Y is making the payment on behalf of X, then he should have PAN card and Aadhaar card of both these people on record. And this is available only for this, so that hospital would not be penalized. Because what started happening was there was an emergency kind of situation. Now I don't have money available in my bank. I crowd fund from my all relatives and all the people. Getting go to the hospital and give 5 lakhs rupees. Hospital say no, I can't accept 5 lakhs in cash because of 216 ST. There's restriction. Then on an emergency basis, they came out with this circular, but it is applicable only for 2 months, April and May. If somebody wants to do it now, the hospital can't accept it. Sir, is there a reporting requirement? 216 ST, there are 2 reporting requirements. One by the auditor, tax audit report, another a self-disclosure, that is SFT, form number 61A. If you have received anything in excess of 2 lakhs in cash, you have to report in form number 61A. One important thing which we should note, yesterday we received a notification extending various due dates, which were all due on 30th June, extended to July, August, September, and so on and so forth. However, surprisingly, the due date for filing SFT has not been extended, because even when the portal was down, so even form number 61A could not be filed. Again, I would request SIRC to raise this issue with the board and get some clarification, because the people who were not able to file 61A because of the portal being not working will now have only 4 or 5 days to comply with this provision. As of now, there is no extension available for 61A filing. This is 30th June is the due date, and you need to file unless the government extend this, which in all probability may, if this issue is raised before the authorities at a proper forum. Again, some compliance provision. If there is an account wherein there is a one or more current account wherein the deposit in cash exceeds 1 crore, then it is mandatory to file income tax return. And it is possible that my income is less than 2,50,000. Okay, or I am a farmer. I receive the sale produce in cash. Okay, and I deposit in the bank. I may not file the return because my income is exempt from that. But if the cash deposited is more than 1 crore, then it is mandatory for me to file the tax return. And income tax report, you have to report the amount of cash deposited in the bank. So the farmer, now as I was mentioning this 216 ST, if the farmer receives sale proceed in excess of 2 lakhs in cash, 216 ST is triggered. So you will never know where this section will get triggered. This is a very, very important section which needs to be studied. And in fact, there need to be a specific, there can be a specific seminar of 1.5 hours on only this section. That important is this section. So SIRC, I would request that they should, if they have not in the past done this session on 216 ST, worth taking the session on 216 ST.
Yes, we will consider it.
Then, yeah, thank you. So section 139A also provides for quoting the PAN number in respect of certain cash transaction. The payment to hotel is more than 25,000. If the cash deposit is more than 50,000, they have listed various transactions. So if the transactions are specified transaction, then it is mandatory to quote PAN number. And if it is not quoted, then the penalty is 10,000 for each default. So though it's not a provision which restricts the cash transaction, it's more of a reporting provision, because once the PAN number is there and you have done say 500 transactions throughout the year across various places in cash, and you have reported PAN everywhere, the system will pick up the PAN and will capture all the transactions at one place. So that's the whole idea. And the AI will work in the background and will say on this PAN there are 500 cash transactions of 50,000. So it will be flagged, getting for the further investigation, further survey, whatever it should be done. So this is how they are collating the data from various sources, and artificial intelligence is giving the red flags to the department. Anonymous donation. Now this may not be necessarily a cash transaction thing, but I thought that we should discuss this because many a times these anonymous donations are in the kind of cash transactions only. So what is anonymous donation? So it is applicable to a charitable trust. It is not applicable to religious trust, because say for example, if somebody goes to Tirupati and he puts 10 lakhs rupees cash in the donation box, it is anonymous because nobody knows who has given. So to tax them is not right. So considering the sentiments and the beliefs and other things, the income tax law has specifically provided that the concept of anonymous donation would apply only and only to a charitable trust. So as I was mentioning, a Robin Hood kind of hero in a film used to go and give the cash, bag full of cash as a donation, anonymous donation. So that can be done. But then there will be two provisions which will be triggered. 260 and ST would be triggered. So if he has received 10 lakhs donation, 10 lakhs is the penalty. Not only that, over and above, if the identity of the person who is giving the donation is not available, then that donation is also subject to taxation. Now you imagine how dangerous is 260 and ST. So you are paying tax at 30% on a donation. You are also paying 100% penalty. So you have received 100 and you are paying tax and penalty which is 130 plus interest plus penalty on these anonymous donations, what not and what not. So it can go up to 160-70% of the amount received. So this interplay is very, very critical. So what is anonymous donation? Anonymous donation means any voluntary contribution received by a charitable trust where a person receiving such contribution does not maintain the record of the identity. What identity record? Name and address of the person making such contribution. PAN number है नहीं है कोई फर्क नहीं पड़ता है. There is no requirement of PAN number under that section. It is name and address of such person and such other particulars as may be prescribed. They have not yet prescribed any particulars. So if a trust receives a donation which is anonymous, then such donation is taxable straight at 30%. You are not entitled to claim exemption under section 11 in respect of anonymous donation. However, there is a threshold limit. They say that up to 1 lakh or 5% of total donation, whichever is higher, will not be considered as anonymous donation. Anything over and above that will be subject to tax at 30%. But then if it is cash, and about 2 lakhs, not only you are hit by this section, but you are also hit by 269 ST. So this 260 and ST has a very serious interplay with various provisions. Okay, so this anonymous donation can be by a check. Somebody gives me a check, I deposit, and the income tax, I have not maintained the record. Income tax officer asks me कि donation का नाम or address do I don't have. So that will qualify as anonymous donation, and that would be taxable straight at 30%. Okay. So as we planned, I've tried and finished my session in the desired time limit. So I think we can open the floor for question and answers.
Yes.
If there are any. So if cash is accepted as a legal tender, then why it can't be deposited? No, there is no restriction on deposited. I understand when you say it can't be deposited. You mean to say it can't be deposited in your own bank account. Okay. So there is no restriction under the Income Tax Act on you to deposit cash in the bank. However, there is a restriction for accepting the cash, even though it's a legal tender, no doubt about it. It's a legal tender, but there is a restriction. There is a restriction on accepting the same. Screen that this scheme, okay, yeah. So cash accepting, absolutely there's no problem. But whether you are accepting cash as a loan, deposit, or a sale transaction, basis that there will be a various provision which will trigger. However, the higher limit is rupees 2 lakhs in accepting the cash. So there is, in fact, it's other way around. There is a restriction on accepting the cash. However, there is no restriction on depositing the cash. So I think that is the answer I can figure out. But I'm still trying to understand the question. So let's go to the next one. Top up bank jewel loan has been topped up. Only difference amount was received, but the bank has shown as if cash received for the old loan and cash paid for the fresh loan. In the bank saving statement, bank has deducted TDS under 194N. How to deal with this situation? Now, probably what they are trying to do, how can the bank can't deal in cash actually. I don't know why they have deducted under 194N. Then 194N is not triggered. Because when the bank is transferring the money, they are transferring using electronic mode. They are not actually giving you cash and actually receiving the cash. So I think you should talk to the bank and get it reversed. Even if they are not reversing it, you will get the TDS credit. But the only problem is that this level of transaction will be reported, and there will be some inquiry somewhere which will get triggered for no reason. So the only way of doing it is to write to the bank have a meeting with them and explain them that there is no cash involved, and therefore this section is not triggered. Because what happens is, no, the banks don't want to take any chance with this TDS provision because the penalties are substantially large. So many a time, without understanding the provision, whenever are in doubt, err in the favor of department is the simple fundamental principle which normally all deductors follow. That whenever in doubt, err in the favor of department, and that's what they have done. But legally, this is not correct. You should write to them, and I think insist for the reversal, because TDS credit you will get it, but this may result into some inquiry and some survey. You never know what will happen. Please share the PPT provision. Okay, that they will do. The organizers will do. Cash payment made by AOP for agriculture operation, employees payment and other input cost. What are the implications? Now, since the agricultural activity is exempt from tax, then this 48(3) and all these provisions are not applicable to them because there is no income. So as such, when you make the payment in cash for the agricultural operations, you are indifferent. Long and short of it, doesn't make any difference. Yeah, can you scroll? Can you scroll it? Because I finished that an individual SSC, an individual SSC, preferably female, had accumulated some petty savings out of PIN money and also from surplus of cash returned from bank often. In this case, say 5 lakhs deposited into again in the saving account. Will there be any question from the IT department? Now, there may be a question, there may not be a question. That is not an issue. Whether this is prohibited is something which I would like to answer. So, as I mentioned, that if it is your own money, you can deposit 5 lakhs, you can deposit 5 crores, you can deposit 500 crores. There is absolutely no problem. If there is a question, then probably you'll have to give the cash flow and all this explanation. There is a recent Jaipur tribunal decision wherein a housewife has deposited some 2 lakh rupees at a time of demonetization. And the tribunal has said that this is justifiable and therefore it cannot be taxed as an unexplained income. The only difficulty is that if you are unable to explain this deposit, then this will amount to unexplained credits, an unexplained investment or an unexplained asset. And the tax liability in such case would be 75% minimum plus 7.5% penalty. 82.5% will be the tax liability. So before you do it, please ensure that you have enough, I would say, basis and enough documentation or enough strong explanation available for you to justify this kind of deposits. An orphanage received large cash donations from visitors. It is not possible to say that we don't accept cash donation because orphanage runs on a heavy deficit. Now, what should be done in this case is that please ensure that you don't account for more than 2 lakh donation as a single entry. I hope you're getting the point. You record, suppose you have received 50 lakhs rupees cash donation throughout the period. So don't record a single entry donation received 50 lakhs. You ensure that this is split into 150, 1 lakh, less than 2 lakhs, up to 2 lakhs, you can pass respective entries. Okay. So this will help you to get out of 216 ST. That is 100% of the amount received is penalty. However, you will still be subject to the provision of 115 BBC, which is the anonymous donation, and the orphanage would be subject to income tax at a rate of 30%. That you can't avoid. A customer deposited rupees 5 lakhs in my client account. Whether 216 ST applicable in this case? Now, from client account, I understand that this is an account open for making the tax payment on behalf of clients. Okay. Now, ideally, you should not, I would say, allow people to deposit cash into your bank. Ideally, because once it gets triggered, unnecessarily you will get into complications. And it should be strictly said that they have to deposit by way of check. Having said so, even if suppose it has happened already, okay, and if you can show that this cash was received and this cash was paid for making the tax payment, TDS payment, etc., then 216 ST is not triggered for the simple reason that you were holding that money only in trust. This money was never given to you. It's like that I am going to my village, I come to you, I have this 10 lakhs of cash, please hold it for me for 5-10 days till I'm back. You are holding it. So that would not trigger 216 ST. Because I have just given you in a trust. So exactly the same thing happens when a client is depositing money in your client account. But the only important thing you should ensure that you should not mix up your regular account and client account. You should keep your client account exclusively client account, so that one-on-one you should be able to prove the link. So if you have utilized that 5 lakhs for your own purpose, and then in future you paid back that 5 lakhs, if that kind of jumbled thing has happened in your account, then 216 ST may trigger. So advice number 1, please insist that nobody should deposit cash in your account. Second, even if it is deposited, please ensure that it is one-to-one linked. And third, you should maintain an independent and separate client account. Please pull this session to YouTube, sir. That organizers can decide. I have given my permission for that. Can you scroll it, please? I think कुछ ऊपर miss हुआ है. थोड़ा नीचे आ जाइए. Last, there was a last question. Yeah, just 1 second. हाँ, ऊपर आ जाइए थोड़ा ऊपर. बस. No, I think there was you have come quite ahead. और पीछे और ऊपर जाइए. There are some more questions. और ऊपर.
This is not covered, sir. Whether religious trust can
इसके ऊपर भी कुछ क्वेश्चन था. What you take me to the last question which I discussed.
No. You have gone too far.
अच्छा. Exactly. It was on second page. You are probably on
Second page only.
We were on first page probably.
We want to go to first page, sir.
Yeah.
No. Second page.
Okay. But hold on.
Yes.
No, it's the second page. Go to first page, no? Because I think there were some more questions. You come to the question wherein this client account deposit was asked.
Here. Okay. Here.
This is the last question, sir.
नहीं और ऊपर है.
No. Yes.
Correct.
Orphanage received cash donation.
Now go point wise, step by step.
A female SSC deposited also over.
That we discussed whether any amount received in cash in relation to transfer of immovable property.
Yes. Yes, from there. Any amount received cash.
Yeah. Whether any amount received in cash in relation to transfer of immovable property in excess of 20,000, not an advance, but against full consideration, fall under section 216 SS. In the same about transaction, the consideration received in cash is in excess of 2 lakhs. Whether the provision of section 216 ST attracts or falls under the exception category, the state transaction is covered under. So if it is covered under 216 SS, it is out of 216 ST. Okay, that is answering your second part of the question. First part of the question, yes, it is covered under 216 SS, whether it is received as a sale consideration or whether it is received as advance, and whether the transaction has been consummated or not. So to answer your question, yes, it will be subject to the provision of 269 SS and not 269 ST. Suppose the SSC issues simple cross check, but the recipient puts into his bank account and even the bank statement shows the name of the payee. Can it avoid disallowance? Yes, it will avoid disallowance, but then you will have to go through the whole process of explaining to the officer. The officer may not agree. You may have to go to the appeal. But in my view, if it can be shown, then at the appellate stage, you should get the relief. There are decisions which have said that as long as the transaction has been done properly and the payer and the payee are the same person to whom the checks were issued, so the penalty should not be levied or the disallowances should not be made. But then again, it becomes a touch and go situation. So it is avoidable. It's an avoidable situation. But something has happened of this kind, then yes, these two documents can be produced before the officer to justify the transaction and to show that the transaction was genuine. Outstation debtors deposits cash into seller's bank account. will it amount to cash received from customer? Yes, it will amount to cash received from customers. And I have seen the cases. I have seen the cases where the income tax department has levied penalty under 216 ST if the amount is more than 2 lakhs.
This
So
question
please
is
don't.
sir, first question was the same thing. The same question was the first question.
Okay.
Your
Donation
question.
received from X and his 5 other family members, 2,000 each. So this 12,000. One receipt is made mentioning all the 6 names. All the 6 names in one receipt. Try and avoid doing that. You can issue 6 receipts. Technically, you should issue 6 receipts because there are 6 donors. So you can always cancel that one receipt and issue 6 receipts. If the numbering has already been given, you can have 12A, 12B, 12C, 12D, so on and so forth. But try and give separate because, and going forward, it will not be an issue because now you have to file a donation return of donation under ATG, wherein each PAN number and each person has to be shown separately. And this will be reflected in 26 years. So even if the donation receipt is common, you should be able to get the deduction and you should get a deduction in this case also. It happens. In fact, this kind of thing happens where the company, employer deducts a day's salary from all the employees. Say, let's say there are 500 employees. Each employee contributes 1 day's salary to the common pool and that is donated to some charitable trust. So the charitable trust issues one receipt. So in that case, what happens on that receipt, they give an enclosure. And in that enclosure, all the names are mentioned and basis that we can claim the deduction. It is possible to claim deduction. Yeah. We can come to page 2 now. Yeah. Whether religious trust can receive donation from anonymous person in form of cash. Yes, the religious trusts are exempt from anonymous donation. As I have given you the example of Tirupati Balaji. The people are pouring in the money there. Now to say that this all donation is anonymous and pay 30% tax would be a disaster and it would not be right also. Okay, so yes, religious trusts are exempt from anonymous donation provision.
It should be
So let me
registered.
know whether
Hello.
sorry,
That trust should have been registered only.
it has to be. If it is not registered trust, then they don't get any exemption. Whatever is received is fully taxable.
That's
It
what
has to
many.
be a registered trust under 12A. It has to be a religious trust registered under 12A. So whenever there is a word used trust, I presume that it is registered under 12A. If it is not registered under 12A, then it is an association of persons. Then there is absolutely no exemption. There is no concept of anonymous donation. Everything is taxable under
That's
56.
what
Because it's
many
yeah.
trusts that they are not susceptible to tax without registration at only also.
Yes, without registering, you have no exemption. These all provisions are applicable to a registered charitable trust or registered religious trust. If you are not registered, then you are not a trust in that sense. You are an EOP. So whatever donation you receive, it becomes a gift taxable under 56 fully.
There again, registration is not registered with the sub-registrar office. Income tax registration at Tolle is more important. That many don't know in smaller places.
Oh, I think that you should have one more. You should have one
Yes.
session specifically on charitable trust to discuss all the basic fundamental principle of registration, application, and other things. Because 12A is mandatory, huh? And also
Yes.
one more thing, since this issue has been raised, all the trusts which are already registered in the past, all the registrations are cancelled now.
Yes.
All the trusts are again required to make a fresh application for registration, and that date has been extended to 31st August 2021. If a trust doesn't make an application under the new form, then they would be a trust which is not registered and they would be subject to the complete taxation under Income Tax Act. No exemption whatsoever would be available. So this is very, very critical. This is very, very critical. Hospitals insisting cash payment during lockdown time where no banks are functioning. What are the remedies? Whether cash payment could be made. Now, there is one section 275, which provides that 274, which provides that if there is a reasonable cause, then the penalty would not be levied. When you make a cash payment to an hospital about 2 lakhs, the penalty is leviable on the hospital. Okay, and the hospital will have to show that it was a pandemic, it was a COVID time, I think it was complete mayhem everywhere, And in this situation, we have taken the cash, but we have taken the PAN card, Aadhaar card of the person. So in my view, even if it is a violation of 216 ST, but because there is a reasonable cause, the penalty would not be levied. A charitable trust purchase material for rupees 1 lakh and pays by account paid check and distribute the salary to individual. Yeah, that's okay. That is okay. Because the application is the purchase. Now it's a distribution. It's only an giving the donation to the people. What you have actually done is purchase of the sari. So that is subject to 40A. Sorry, it's actually that new amendment of 10,000 rupees. Distribution is okay. Payment of electricity bill about 10,000 in cash. Is it allowed? No, because it is not payment to government or under the law to the government. Section 44AB, cash, non-account pay check. What is the position? NEFT, RTGS is all electronic payment. They are always covered. Wherever we say account pay check, we always include NEFT, RTGS, Paytm, Google, whatever payment you can say, UPI, everything is covered. So that all payment come under electronic transfer. Okay, all this payment comes under electronic transfer. Account pay check, bearer check, cross check, and cash. These are the 5 categories I can list down. So RTGS, NEFT is definitely covered. Whether a jeweler can receive cash in excess of 2 lakhs in cash for sale of jewelry from a single person? No. No. Single person, single day, no. But a single person for different invoices can give. तो अगर मेरा एक invoice 5 लाख का है, if my invoice is of 5 lakhs, I cannot receive about 2 lakhs in cash. I cannot receive about 2 lakhs in cash. Whether 48.3 will be applicable to presumptive provision? No, 48.3 is not applicable to presumptive provision. 6% or 8% is after all adjustment. So 48.3, 48.1A, even if there is a failure to deduct tax at source, 48.3 nothing would apply. That 6 and 8% is final after all the disallowances. Please explain the cash 5% cash threshold under 44AB. So if suppose my total receipt during the year, all receipts taken together, whether it's loan or whatever it is say 1 crore, then 5 lakhs is the amount which I can spend by or receive by way of cash. If it is more than 5 lakhs, then I am out. Similarly for the payment, all the payment, what I have to do is I have to take all the payment of my bank from my bank side and all my cash book, total it, that becomes my 100%. 5% should be or less than 5% should be my bank payment. So I would take bank ka pura credit side and mera cash book ka pura credit side. Total it, that becomes my 100%. Compute 5% and compare with my cash book ka credit side. PPT will be shared if at the time of executing agreement, the consideration is paid partly through account paid check and partly in cash. Whether stamp paper valuation at the time of agreement, yes, it can be considered because some payment should be paid in check. And suppose 10 lakhs का payment है, उसमें से 8 lakhs you have given by check and 2 lakhs by cash, no problem, because that payment would establish that there was a transaction. Even if 1 lakh is in check and 9 lakhs in cash, still in my view it would get the benefit of the old stamp duty value. In many cases, AO has not allowed deduction for preventive health checkup. What could be the reason? I can't comment on that. What could be the reason? They have to provide, and you will have to go to the appeal, and you may not have provided the proper invoice or the proper proof of payment being made for the health checkup. Or if the system has disallowed on the CPC portal, then you have to file an appeal or ask for the reprocessing of the return. Or there may be some error in reporting or in mentioning in the ITR somewhere. In case of preventive health check, the receiver also protected if he receive amount in cash. No, receiver is protected. He can receive up to 2 lakhs. But if the preventive health checkup payment is about 2 lakhs, then the receiver is not protected. 216 ST would be applicable. Hundi collection of temple, what is the treatment? Nothing, we have discussed. If it is a registered trust under 12A and 85% is spent, then it is fully exempt. You have to spend 85%. If you don't spend and you just accumulate it, then that is taxable. If health insurance premium or ATG is not claimed, if it is not claimed, then there is no reporting requirement. If sale consideration in agreement of sale is lower than 50C value on the date of sale deed, which value to be considered? Yeah, if sale consideration in agreement of sale is lower than 50C value, of course, stamp duty value, whichever is higher has to be considered. Whichever is higher has to be considered. Charitable trust receiving donation in cash exceeding 2,000, not giving ATG receipt, whether the same is treated as income. So it's a charitable trust registered under 12A. It is income, but if they spend 85%, then it is exempt from tax. I have sold goods to a single party totaling rupees 3 lakhs by issuing 3 invoices each of rupees 1 lakh. I received the entire amount of 3 lakhs in cash on different dates, but below 2 lakhs. 216 ST would not be attractive. Same day you should not receive 2 lakhs. If fresh loan is given by cash, does it attract 216 ST? Yes. In case the person giving the loan, the giver of the loan will never be subject to 216 SS, T or ST. It is the recipient of loan who will be subject to the rigors of 216 SS or 216 T or ST. After the loan received of rupees 1 lakh, whether payment can be made rupees 10,000 per month per day in cash? No, you can't. Once it's about 2 lakh 20,000, you have to do it by way of account paycheck. Cash payment towards construction of residential building, is it affected under any section of the income tax? If you are not claiming any deduction, then it is not affected. If you are not claiming any deduction, you are not claiming any depreciation, then it is not affected. However, the recipient may be covered under some of the provision, 216 ST or some provision, then he may object to it. Otherwise, if it is a personal expenditure, nothing to worry. Is it permissible in case of private limited company dealing in agricultural produce, entire purchase and sale in cash, procured from growers and sells it to unregistered person on cash less than 2 lakhs? It's permissible. No issue nahi hai. As long as it's less than 2 lakhs, absolutely no problem. And because it's an agricultural activity, now please understand, if they are dealing in agricultural produce, that doesn't give them any exemption. Because that agricultural produce dealing is not an agricultural activity. So if they are selling in cash, no problem. The amount should be less than 2 lakhs. If they are purchasing in cash, then they can purchase it provided they satisfy the requirement of Rule 6 DD. If that is not satisfied, then 48(3) would trigger and 100% of that amount would be disallowed. For a loan received of rupees 1,50,000, whether interest can be paid in cash. Yeah, interest can be paid in cash, no problem. In case 15,000 you can't pay because it is more than 10,000. This will be disallowed fully. Sorry. The limit is 10,000, 48 ka. So if it is 15,000, that entire 50,000 will be disallowed. In case a person given loan rupees 25 lakhs through banking channel out of the fund from sale of house property, whereas same was repaid by recipient of loan in cash. In such case, the repercussion is severe because not only the person who is repaying would be covered under 216 T, but also the person who is receiving the cash would be covered under 216 ST. So he will also pay 100% penalty. He will also pay 100% penalty. Avoidable, should not be done. In case of 216 SS, how do we report when the lender is deceased and it should be transferred in the name of legal heir? Similarly, how do we report loan? No, in that case, there is no repayment. It is only the change of name. So they will give you an death certificate and application. Okay, this is what has happened. You will just change the name of the account from X, it will become Y. So you will not pass an entry that you have repaid loan to X and the loan has been taken from Y. Don't do that. If you do that, then there is a complication. You just change the name of the account by transferring it from this account to that account with the narration that on account of death, the loan has now been transferred to the legal heirs. Cash given to employee as advance. Incurred expenditure more than 10,000 for one transaction. It will be disallowed. It will be disallowed unless the employee pays back the 10,000. Okay, then there is no issue. I hope you're getting the point. So if it remains if that advance is adjusted towards salary in future, then there is an issue. But if it is not adjusted in advance salary and is repaid, but the problem will be with the employee, because if it is up to 20,000, no issue. But if it is about 20,000, then the employee receiving the loan would be subject to penalty. In 260 only account pay check is mentioned. No. Whenever account pay check is mentioned, there is a circular or notification. All electronic modes are covered. As a professional, what would be the consequences if we pay consideration for purchase of immovable property in cash? As a professional, the consequence is same. The law is same whether you are professional or you are a layman. However, one important thing which we should know is that if a penalty is levied for incorrect disclosure or under reporting or misreporting of income, okay, there is a provision in the Income Tax Act that you will not be considered as a representative or a person authorized under the Income Tax Act for signing tax audit report or for making the representation before the officer. So that is a very critical provision which many of us are not aware. That if I file my income tax return and there are some bogus claims, okay, and the penalty is levied on me, okay, so then I would not qualify as a chartered accountant qualified to issue the reports or to represent the SSC, etc., etc. So that authority under the law will be taken away. So that is something as a professional we should be doubly careful. That is not only the penalty, but also your professional work which will get impacted. Can we pay stamp duty for purchase of share in cash? Yes, because it is a tax payable to government and allowed to be paid in legal tender. You can pay it in cash. There is no problem. Can we pay stamp duty for, okay, whether 215 ST applicable for cash gifts? Yes, it is applicable between relatives. Kindly upload video on TK. Whether receipt from partners of firm, yes, will fall. That's what 261 ST has a very wide ambit. So even a partnership firm receives a cash from partner, 216 ST will be triggered. If trust paid cash in excess of 2 lakhs for purchase of land, trustee 712A, whether any section triggers. So if you make a payment of 2 lakhs, about 2 lakhs, that would not qualify as an application. That is the only consequences in the hands of the trust. However, the recipient would be subject to penalty of 2 lakhs or whatever the amount is. So in all probability, the recipient will not accept in cash. But if he is unaware of the provision, then it may happen. Can loan taken in bank in earlier years be repaid in cash over the years? So banks are exempted under this section. So you can repay in cash to the bank. You can deposit, because what happens is many a time you deposit cash in the bank. That's a repayment by cash only. You can deposit 20 lakhs directly in the cash to the bank. No problem. 261 ST cash sales should not be more than 2 lakhs, even with GST amount. Now that is something which needs deliberation. Okay, so they say amount received. So I would say with GST. Will anyone file Form 61A for the specified transaction when surely knowing that penalty will be levied? The issue is not that whether anyone will file. That's a legal requirement. If you don't file, not only penalty will be levied, but for 61A wrong declaration also penalty will be levied. There can be prosecution. There are consequences. And normally people will try and avoid it, but then because there is a clause getting it reminds us that this transaction has to be reported. Whether a hundi collection may consider anonymous, we have discussed. No. Too many breaks. I'm sorry for that. 115 BBC shall be linked with AML. What is AML? I don't know. In case of preventive health checkup, the receiver also protected if the received amount in cash is protected as long as it is less than 2 lakhs. Nidhi company, there are no exemption. Huh? Nidhi companies, I don't think they have been notified under 2 section SS and T. But Nidhi company gives the loan, so they are not subjected to these issues. Whether 43 provisions are applicable when SSE declares income under presumptive? No, not applicable. Whether a partner can introduce capital of 10 lakhs by way of cash on 10 different dates of rupees 1 lakh each. So this is something which one will have to take chance. This is something which one will have to take the chance, and I would not suggest to do that. I would not suggest to do that, because if you are introducing the capital and you are going to record it in the books and you are going to disclose it, then what is the need? What is the need to deposit? You go to the banking channel to avoid all these issues. But if this transaction has already happened, you can always argue that it is less than 2 lakhs and each transaction is an independent transaction, but not free from doubt. Whether rupees 2 lakhs for accepting cash is for each day or entire year. Now it is, if there is a single invoice for more than 2 lakhs, so you cannot receive in cash about 2 lakhs. But if there are different invoices on different days, then that is possible. So it is per invoice, per person. Seems Form 16 filing is possible now. Yes. I don't know, but it must be possible. It should be possible. Okay, next. We are done.
Yes. Selva, please type what is the, we are sharing this PPT by mail, no?
Yes, sir. We will share it, sir, at the end of the session.
That is one. Number two, YouTube, some people want link. That also you type there.
Sure, sir.
So that all will be benefited.
Sure, sir. We will do it, sir.
Okay. Please. So we have come to an end. Thank you very much, Pankaj-ji, for an excellent presentation. Thank you very much, Pankaj-ji, for your time and also presentation. You have cautioned so much, and the presentation is liked by many. That's why so many people have asked for PPT. Everybody knows cash transactions, but bringing all the sections at one place, like a presentation done by you, that is very much needed. In fact, I was noting down all the sections, to section numbers from your table. So that's the reason why so many people are asking for PPT.
No, please, happy to share, sir. Happy to share. No problem.
Thank you very much for your time in preparing the PPT also. That is most self-explanatory. Thank you very much for your time, and we may require your presentation in future also. We may call upon you for some future presentations if required. Thank you very much, and I also thank the participants who are more than 450 across throughout, and the importance of these sections and also consequence of non-compliance also is very serious. So many members, most of the members are benefited out of this. Thank you all the members. Your participation definitely gives us the what's called encouragement to conduct so many such programs, more and more such programs in future also. I thank you, Selva, but for some technical glitches today, it went on. Ultimately, we were able to see that the total presentation is done. And I also thank the chairman for the topic and the SIRC office for the support. Thank you, one and all. Good night.
Thank you for the opportunity. Thank you.